Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Shears, the podcast where groomers get business savvy. I'm Crystal Lee, the groomer's accountant, and today we're diving into a topic that affects every grooming business owner, money mistakes. Whether you're a solo groomer or running a full salon, managing finances can make or break your business. So my guest today is Laurren Segraves from Transfurmational Solutions. She is a professional groomer and bookkeeper who helps other pet grooming business owners get their finances back in order. So just to kind of make a little caveat here, a lot of people will do work with both of us, but I want to set the record straight that we are two separate businesses. So Laurren is with Transfurmational Solutions, and she specializes in bookkeeping and payroll services. And I am with Pet Biz Advisors. And I focus on business entity setups, taxes, tax planning, business valuations, profit advising, business coaching, and so forth. And I will soon offer an online paid subscription community that you can come in and actually join a community of like-minded grooming business owners. So Transfurmational Solutions, what Laurren likes to do is she will help set up with your bookkeeping setup and ongoing services and payroll taxes. And she will also serve as a foundation, kind of like as a foundational partner for newer businesses. So if all of you baby groomers out there that are just getting started, she would be one that you really want to help to work with, because she is a groomer herself and she's run her business for several years. So Laurren, if you don't mind, please share any new things that you're working on at the moment.
Yeah. I started at first the Transfurmational Solutions, which was really dedicated to teaching pet groomers how to best manage their personal finances and how to plan ahead for things such as an emergency fund, retirement, any financial goals that they want to do. And what I noticed when I was working with those people, that almost all of them were bringing their salon's financials into play. And a lot of them were having a hard time coming up with accurate numbers because some of their bookkeeping work was so behind. So in December, I said, you know what? I think I am going to launch this. I never thought I would go back to my first career, but I'm going to launch this and see if I can provide this service that will help others. And oh my gosh, it has taken off. It has taken off so much that what I thought was just kind of like a side gig, a side business, has gotten to the point over the last 3 months that I'm actually having to cut back on my days actually grooming in the salon. And I'm really having to monitor, as I get more clients coming in and whatnot, the changes that I am going to have to make with my salon, because all of these awesome groomers have kept me so busy helping them with their salons. I'm not finding much time to work in my own. And honestly, that is not a bad thing at all. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But I'm learning that my real passion in life is helping others. And especially with working with groomers, how they're so creative minded. I feel like I've really been able to explain things to them in a way that maybe they haven't understood before. So right now I am just taking it all in stride and taking one day at a time and just growing and loving it.
That sounds wonderful. Well, congratulations on such a successful start, because a lot of small businesses, when you first start, it takes a minute to get your footing, right? So for sure. And so I'm glad that you started. Trust me, I'm very glad you started because you're able to take on some more of the bookkeeping, because obviously you and I have talked in the past, and what I do with Pet Biz Advisors is that I have been able to do bookkeeping in the past. And so, but it takes a lot of time and some work, because I also want to go more into the consulting side of helping the small business owners, specifically in the pet grooming niche. So I appreciate you coming on board with that.
Yeah. And, I appreciate you having me and us working together with the community and kind of sharing clients too. And as you mentioned, a lot of people tend to think we're together with, the business situation. But I kind of like to say, when they ask me, I'm like, it's not like we're married. It's kind of like we're dating. You'll see both of us a lot. You're only going to see her twice a year, likely, but you're going to see me every month. So we're not always together, but
Gotcha.
It's a working relationship for sure, but it's not a marriage. So we're not one.
That's right. We're not one entity. We're a couple of different ones, but we get along pretty well. So that's great. So, Lauren, what I want to do today is just kind of uncover some of the biggest financial mistakes that grooming business owners make, and then how to avoid them. Because I
Yeah.
think we're both kind of in an area that we have seen a lot with the books, with from a bookkeeping standpoint. And I know you like to specialize in budgets. I know you have a group right now, and you're helping with the budgeting. How is that going for you, by the way?
Yeah, that's going great. I think the hardest part is getting everybody to sit down and actually do their budget. And I think a lot of that comes with, as I had mentioned, trying to help creative people understand their numbers. The creative people actually having to sit down and look at the numbers, I think that's very painstaking for a lot of them, which is probably why I have such an awesome new business, because everybody kind of hates doing it. But the ones that have really, honestly, it's almost like they've had to force themselves to sit down, write down the numbers, and get on board with it. And for a lot of people, it has been really eye-opening. And this is what I have always said. 30 days doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it is a lot of time when one day you spend $27, the next day you spend $42, the day after that you spend $17, then the day after that it goes on and it goes on and it goes on for 30 days. So while you're in the moment, you're swiping those cards, that doesn't seem like a lot. But once you put everything in and see where every single dollar is going, it's really like an awakening for you. And I have a lot of people that have, once they've settled down and looked at, okay, this is my financial situation, this is what I need to do to change that. They have had a fire lit underneath them and they're going crazy. I don't want to, mention any names, but there's some, influential groomers in that group within the community. And these people have made up the awesomest plans. I have one who's like, I am going to be paying my house off in the next 5 years. And this is my plan. And this is how I'm going to do it. So I have some people that are kind of got to meander up the energy to actually get everything in there. There are some people who are like, my entire financial life is changed. I am ready to run through a brick wall. I am pumped. Let's go.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know it. I always kind of get I think also it has to depend on their experiences, right? How well they have handled this in the past. Because I know for myself, budgeting is not fun, even for someone who supposedly likes numbers, guys. I'm going to tell myself here. But budgeting is not fun for me. I have a thing where I don't like restrictions on myself. And I know that sounds silly, but it's just a psychological thing. And it's not that, I think it's a bad thing, because I inherently don't. I really don't. But I think it's just, for me, it's like I have to focus my energy on so much. I want one thing I don't have to worry about as much. I just want to be a carefree. But honestly, guys, finance is not the place to do that. So,
and
yeah,
it's such a psychological thing. It's like, if you tell yourself you can't, you just want to do it. I may not want to actually eat a whole bag of Doritos, but if you tell me you cannot eat that whole bag of Doritos, I'm going to want to eat the whole bag of Doritos. And the word budget is not necessarily a friendly word either. I've compared
it's like diet.
Yes, diet, budget, all these terrible words.
Yeah.
They are the adult equivalent of the word grounded. You are grounded, because that's what a budget sounds like. It sounds like it is a restrictive set of rules that doesn't let you do anything. So while the word itself is terrible, I've said if you need to find another word for it, go for it. But instead of looking at it as something that is restrictive, think of it as a written guide, or a permission list of things you are allowed to spend your money in. So even if you are trying to hunker down, not spend money in certain areas, tackle your debts, that type of thing, it's very important to at least allow yourself a little bit of wiggle room. Even if that's just putting, an extra $50, $100 a month on that budget to give yourself something to look forward to, going to the movies, a dinner, or anything that you enjoy. But it's very important to be true to your goals, but also realize we got to have fun in life, and you can do both, but you got to do it in moderation. So I never say you can't go buy this item that's $80. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can do whatever you want as long as you have written it out in your budget and gave yourself permission with your financials to be able to do that. And when you look at it that way, it's a much more insightful and kinder way to yourself.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely setting that intentional goal, right? We have to be intentional with our money. And that's, kind of the idea of what we're getting at is like forming good financial habits. So one of the ways is that, one of the issues that I've seen, Laurren, is people not keeping track of their income and expenses. And so that seems to be, especially this time of year, it's kind of like it's tax season. People are kind of scrambling. They're like, oh no, I don't know how much I made this last year, because most people like to keep up with either with the banks or bank statements or their merchant's accounts. They'll do that. And so that'll be one of the things that we'll look at. But the thing is, what do you recommend? What do you recommend for people to do to keep up with their things throughout the year so they're not scrambling?
Right. Yeah. And really, the best thing is going to be consistency. And I work with a lot of clients that they have backward that either they didn't get to themselves or the prior bookkeeper they had was a little bit behind. And I'm adamant that it has to be done monthly in order for you to make decisions in your business, because that is, your finances are the total health of your business. And you cannot make a solid, informed decision unless you know what's going on with your money. So I will often see doing backward for people when, several quarters, we're seeing, oh my gosh, you didn't notice that this was going on, or you had this big payroll expense or this type of thing. And by the time you notice, it's too late. So when you're actively working, getting through each month and seeing those things, that's when you'll be able to make the changes before they really start to affect you. Because yes, it can hurt a little bit depending on what it is if it gets out of hand for a month, but it's not as much hurt as if it gets out of hand for 3 months, 6 months, up to the whole year, when you could have had several opportunities to look back on that. And, as much I want to say, for doing your business expenses, doing QuickBooks Online is really the best route to go. But for a lot of people, it is a bit of an intimidating software. So if that's an intimidating software to you, having some type of budget thing, maybe just for your personal stuff, where you can see where your own profits are going and what you're spending money on, might be more insightful to you. But definitely, if you feel intimidated by seeing your your QuickBooks account, I said earlier today that I almost want to do something where it's a talk about, business finances. And I want to start it with, these are the following words: asset, equity, liability. If you feel any form of fear or scare, stop listening to this right now and call your local bookkeeper or someone you trust and get the help that you need, because it is very intimidating for a lot of people. So if you don't feel comfortable running those business numbers yourself, it's really important to find somebody that you work well with. That could either be me. You might have, a client that does bookkeeping that you have a great relationship with. Although I would like it to be me, I want something that's going to work best for you. So having somebody who can break that down in a way that you can understand, like, it may seem like it's costly, but honestly, when you let things go and you're not on top of that, that is costing you more money than paying a bookkeeper would cost you.
Exactly. And honestly, I like to kind of refer to that as the difference between being a great groomer and then running a profitable business. Those are actually two different things, and they're not innately joined together. Just like we were talking about how you and I aren't actually joined together, but it goes in the same boat though. And so therefore you want to make sure that in order to be a great entrepreneur and business owner, because we already know everyone who's listening to this they're awesome groomers, right? I mean, raise your hand if you're an awesome groomer out there. I mean, of course you are. So, but the thing is, one of the issues that I see with being a profitable business owner is the fact that they're simply not charging enough to cover cash flow and overhead and payroll and things like that. So that seems to be a lot of an issue. not charging your prices to where they need to be, because they think, well, I'm going to keep my prices low, therefore I'm going to be able to groom more dogs. But the thing is, especially for you solo owners,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
like, what are you really going to pay for? You're going to pay for your health. You're going to pay more in
hmm
supplies. You're going to pay more in your
hmm
mental stress. Like, what is it really worth? And it's not just our industry that has that problem. I feel like groomers and other pet industries, it's full of so many compassionate people. And I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, but they almost run a business in a charitable manner. And you know what? I my faults on that is get your financial health and everything in line and allow yourself an amount in your yearly business budget or however you do it that you can be charitable. But you don't have to be charitable in every single situation. There might be a situation that really tugs at your heartstrings that you really want to, comp a groom or do something for somebody. So it's okay to be charitable and do, these good deeds, but not when it's, costing you, all of the things that I had mentioned and your business. Like a lot of groomers, I thought when I was a kid that I really wanted to be a vet. I thought that was going to be my dream in life. And looking back, I'm actually really glad that it did not work out for me. But the vet that I have worked for, he always told me there are a lot of really good business veterinarians out there, but a lot of really bad business people. So whatever you decide to pursue, whether it's being a vet or it's doing something else, I think it would be a really good choice for you to at least have a minor in business or something that gets you some solid education within the business realm, because having that is going to take you really far and set you above others. And not everybody, has that opportunity, but I think it's important that we, have a self-reflection and know, okay, these are my weaknesses. I feel like sometimes people take advantage of me. They take advantage of my goodwill, my contributions to others. So I think it's really important we look at ourselves and also look at our business and see, while we do want to do good things and help others, we are also running a business. And with the stresses and, the pangs and the aches of this, you should not be doing it for free. And it's important to take a profit. And sometimes people almost want to act like taking a profit is a bad thing, but that's why you go into business. You do want to help others, but most importantly, you've started this to help yourself and build a better life for you and your family.
Exactly. And so that's what I like to also, speaking of profit, I do like to always also recommend the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. And so for those of you that are not really seeing a lot of profits or minimum profits, and I would just really recommend opening up a savings account. And then once you open that savings account, make sure it's for the business. And then every amount of income that you get, every dollar that you get, you take 1% of that money and you transfer it into that new savings account that you have. And so therefore from day one, you're already making profit. So therefore you already have money that is going to that. I know 1% is not a lot, and you can do this weekly. You don't have to do it every single day. You can do it weekly, but just set aside. Typically I go on Mondays or even Fridays. Just pick a day, doesn't matter. And then just transfer 1% of all your income for that prior week into your savings account. And you will be surprised how quickly it grows. So,
and a little hack for you, if you are a Square user, Square does let you set up savings accounts. So you could go in there and you could automatically set for 1% of all of your sales to go into an account. And the one thing that I do like most about the Square savings account is it's out of sight, it's out of mind. You don't see it until you go digging in there to find it. It automatically comes out and you go in there to see it, and it might surprise you. But that's one of the big things too. Like for a lot of people, it's just a little mentally taxing for them to have to make that even if it is 1%. It's a little bit taxing for them to have to actually go in there and physically, make that transfer every week. So I really do like Square having that automated for you. So you're not thinking about it. It's out of sight. It's out of mind. And that works well for a lot of folks.
That's awesome. Thank you for that tip.
Yeah.
I didn't even know Square did that. That's great news. I know there's a lot of things that, you don't have to, if you can automate as much as you can automate, do it, because it takes it off your plate. So definitely with that. And so we were talking a little bit ago about mixing the personal and business finances earlier. And so that seems to also be a really big issue. And so I really want to kind of go over that for all the listeners. So when you mix the personal and business finances, number one, it creates a bookkeeping nightmare, right? It's a bookkeeping nightmare. And then number two, if you own an LLC or a corporation specifically, then it's called piercing the corporate veil at that point. And then therefore your legal entity protection, the reason you got the LLC or corporation, will get put in jeopardy and could possibly go away at that point. So you don't want that to happen if you start mixing your information together. So make sure that you keep all business and personal expenses or transactions separate that way. Now, also, I want to talk about, I want to talk about saving a little bit more because I don't think we can talk about that enough. One of the things that I'm seeing on my end, especially, is with estimated taxes. And people, number one, they're not very familiar with what estimated taxes are, which essentially is you take your total amount of your tax liability for the year that you think you're going to owe, then you break it up into 4 quarterly payments. And those are called tax estimates. Now, this is required for small, like self-employed business owners. And then obviously, if you're on payroll, those can be prepaid in as part of the self-employed estimates as well. But you also want to make sure that the business itself is not making over a certain dollar amount that would cause an additional liability for you. So again, it's a really good idea to get in contact with an accountant that you trust to help you set that up and then to try to figure out how much you're going to owe for the year. So I want to make sure, though, people also are saving for those tax liabilities. So it's better if you have an ideal number in your mind as far as how much you're going to owe. But I would typically say about 20 to 25% of your income until you know for sure what you're going to owe. I would say 20 to 25% of your income to put back in the savings account for taxes. Laurren, as a business owner, what do you typically do with that? How do you typically work that?
Yeah, and another recommendation kind of goes back to that Square account as well. I actually have a Square savings. Now, I am not really messing with the, quarterly estimates because I am set up as an S corp, so I take an actual payroll. But this would still be the same way, whether it's payroll taxes, whether it's just your quarterlies, however you do it, you can set up a Square account for that. And I really, really recommend this. And the reason why, whether you do the traditional savings account or if you are a Square user, going about setting it up through Square, especially because of the out of sight, out of mind mantra that I had mentioned, because when you're especially new in a business and, emergencies come up, you have to replace a piece of equipment, you have this, you have that, you're like, oh yeah, the taxes will wait. And then boom, here they are all at once. And you're having to pay this and you don't have it because you spent it. And unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. We do have to pay taxes. So you should almost consider that money when you make it gone. So it's almost kind of like you're taking away from yourself when you're not setting that aside. You're inflating numbers that aren't actually real. You may have saved, that $4,000 is going to go to taxes, but it's actually sitting there in your checking account and you think you have an extra $4,000 than you really do, but that's actually Uncle Sam's money, unfortunately. But I think really keeping a handle on those amounts and not letting it get out of control can really make a difference for you because, you may have spent that money and here you go, you got a big tax bill and you don't have the money to pay it because you've already spent it. So I really recommend setting up an account and figuring out the amount and putting it towards that every week or going the Square route and it'll automatically deduct that out for you so you don't have to think about it.
Sounds great. Again, Square to the rescue.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Square is a little bit of a pain from a bookkeeping perspective with all of the extra entries. But from a user perspective, it is amazing.
That's awesome. You mentioned a while ago that you are you're paying yourself on payroll as an S corp owner. And so this is good, I guess, segue into the actual payroll. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I have an actual podcast episode number 1, which is with Robert Norlander, the CPA, who is a former IRS agent, that we talked about the misclassification of employees versus contractors. So, guys, if you go into YouTube or on Apple, Spotify, you will find episode 1, Robert Norlander. Go ahead and check that out. But in the meantime, as far as the misclassification of employees, not only is it not the correct way to do it, but also IRS has penalties for treating employees as independent contractors. You have fines. You have, basically they could shut down the business. I'm trying to think of a very, nice way to put this, but it also could even end up in jail time if they find that it's fraudulent and on purpose, like you're actively trying to do that. And it also depends on the number of staff that you have with that. So you want to make sure that you do set things up correctly. Again, I strongly recommend you going to check out that podcast for more details. But the payroll tax responsibilities, Laurren, is kind of what I want to talk with you about, because you were just kind of mentioning about not paying taxes, but the worst one besides income taxes are actually the payroll taxes. Because if you don't pay payroll taxes, Uncle Sam and the states, they don't play nice with that. They really don't.
Because, it's technically other people's money too.
Exactly.
It's not just yours. I mean, yes, you do have your employer contribution, but as the employer, you have a legal responsibility to make the proper withholdings from people's paycheck and hold those until it's time to send into the government. So by not making those proper tax deposits, you are basically stealing from your employees. I mean, I know it sounds harsh the way I'm putting it, but there's really no other way to put it. Like you have been entrusted to have their money and keep it in holding. So if you don't actually take that money, put into a designated account, or just get it out of your primary checking account, you are actually taking their money.
Exactly. One thing that QuickBooks Payroll is doing right now is they are taking your total amount of taxes that you owe, and they're taking it out every pay period. Instead of waiting for the end of the month or the end of the quarter, they're now taking out every pay period. And so I like that a lot because it makes sure that everything gets paid. So QuickBooks then holds it into a type of escrow account. Of course, I'm sure they're not making any money on the savings interest, right? At all. That's not why they're doing it at all. But it does make it a little bit easier for you for that. So yeah, definitely make sure that you're staying on top of that. If you don't have a software that automatically takes out the payments for you, we do recommend, like Laurren said, go ahead and put it in another savings account. That way, that's money that's earmarked and can't be touched. Same thing goes for sales tax. If you know that you have a sales tax liability, you're selling tangible items, or you live in a state where the service that you provide is taxable, make sure every single time at the end of the day, you just transfer that money automatically into a savings account. That way you don't forget to pay it, because some people will say, oh, I didn't do that much. And they go to do their sales tax return and they owe over $1,000 in taxes. And they're like, I don't have that in my account.
Well, and then we kind of go back to, well, you were actually really just supposed to hold that money. But I love the idea of it coming out with each transaction, because especially for people who are designated to do the quarterly payments, that can really bite you. If you're trying to hold on to all of that money for 3 months, things are going to happen. The only predictable thing we have in life is that something is going to happen. I don't know what, but something is going to happen that's going to require some money along the way. So you're just kind of setting yourself up to be in a pickle.
Exactly. All right. So now we're getting into one of my favorite topics is like knowledge is power, right? So one of the most powerful tools that a grooming business owner can have are financial reports. And so the financial reports I'm specifically talking about just for this segment will be the profit and loss statement and the balance sheet. So what is probably one of the best ways as far as making sure that they have an accurate P&L and balance sheet that you can talk about?
Monthly, doing it monthly. going through it every month, having that review. Because with all of my clients, we have in our agreement that they will receive a profit and loss statement once I finish their books by the 15th of the month. If they would like additional advising on that, my feedback, especially because I know how the industry works, I am more than happy to go over that with them. Like, for instance, I recently had one and she had a lot of direct supply sales. And I was like, why is this so high? And then come to find out, her employees were actually ordering the shampoo and ordering the supplies. And I tell you what, if it's not your own money and somebody else says, here, go buy this, like, you might get the upgrade, you might get something a little better, you might get a little more versus when it's your own money. And I'm like, okay, you need to take that saved card off of your account and tell them they just need to stop having shopping sprees because this is getting a little out of control right here. So by seeing that every month, that's going to give you the overview of, okay, I have this going on here, I have this coming in, and then also doing comparisons of it too, because if people ask me to do a little more in-depth analysis, I will often pull the prior year. Like, let's say we're in February, I'll compare last February's with this February, see what's different. Oftentimes, you can typically come up with a scenario as to why some things look different. Like, February might be a month where people aren't getting their dogs groomed as much, they canceled, weather, you might have higher expenses with running your heat or that type of things. So this is definitely an industry that can have some seasonal fluctuations, but if you're not looking at your numbers, you may not know that and you may have a freak out, be like, oh my gosh, why did I make $3,000 less this month? But once you look at your numbers and you start to figure out your trends, especially as a new growing business, that is going to be the optimal answer to all of your problems, basically, when it comes to money, because you have to know where it's going. We know it's coming in, but if you're not actually looking at it and seeing it, you're going to miss something.
That's a really good point. And I really like the fact that you brought up the year-on-year comparisons. Another comparison that I like to do is do the profit and loss statement by month for the entire year, like the year to date. That's also a really good one. So I can see month to month, because as when I'm doing reviews on a set of books, what I will do is I will pull that and I will see, what does payroll typically cost? How much income do I typically get in? Make sure my rent payment is on there for every month. Make sure my utilities are paid for every month, because that way you can see if you've missed something or you maybe misclassified something. So I always really get down into the books. And I always like to tell clients, if something looks off, say, okay, why is this off? And sometimes, like you said, you can explain it away, like, well, this is February. It's a little bit slower month for me. And it always is a slower month. So that's okay. But if, say, the same month, say it's February, but I made $10,000 more, well, are you sure you did? Why did you make $10,000 more? So you have to look down in that, because it could be, for example, maybe you as the business owner put in a contribution and it got misclassified as an income instead. So you don't want to pay taxes on something that's not truly income. So
yes, and don't use AI for your bookkeeping, because that's what they'll do.
Yeah,
we're not going to get on that. That's another podcast episode.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other episode. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a good point. So another thing, and I honestly, guys, I'm going to tell myself, I do this too. If I have kind of an upswing in income and I'm like, okay, I'm having like a really nice few months here. So my cash flow is really good. I'm having savings. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I have a tendency to want to spend that money. I mean, I know it's a psychological mindset, but I'm like, oh, I deserve something nice, or I deserve something great. But one of the things that breaks my heart is when I see a grooming business and they could be making over $1 million a year, but are spending $995,000 a year, and they have nothing to show for it. So getting that spending under control, which is, going back to what Laurren was saying earlier with the budgeting, like, where is your money actually going? And I really do challenge all of you to just take, even if it's just a week, just do a week and see like what all you spent money on, and say, what can I really cut back on that I don't need? Because the idea of profit is not just how much money you can make, but it's how much you keep. It's how much are you spending? And so that's like what actually makes you profitable.
And if you do not, I don't care if you're making $30,000 a year or if you are making $300,000 a year, because that person that's making 30, they might actually be taking home more than the person that is making 300. Because if you don't have a handle on it, it doesn't matter how much money you make. Making more money is not going to alleviate all of your problems if you do not have a handle on them. Instead, what's going to happen, you're going to have more problems and more money to fuel those problems if you do not take action, implement a plan, and figure out what you need to do to get a handle on things. So a lot of people, oh, if I just had an extra, well, you would probably spend it, or you probably make another irresponsible decision that is not in your best interest. So no matter how much money you're making, and I have to say, I am so proud of these new people that they've either have bought a mobile or acquired a salon or started one up late last year. Or I even have some right now that they're not going to be launching until like April or May. They've already actually taken the step of contacting me and coming up with a plan because they want to be ahead of things before they happen. So we're getting them set up on bookkeeping for a business that's barely starting or hasn't even started at all. And apparently this is something we like to do as Americans. I was listening to a podcast that was talking about in majority of other countries, especially like Australia, when you decide, okay, I want to open a business, the first thing they typically do is they go hire somebody to do their bookkeeping, to do their accounting, to have some advisory role in what their finances are and be able to have it ready for them. Whereas in the States, we have more of a tendency to, I'll deal with that later after I make a little bit of money. And then you keep putting it off, and then you keep putting it off, and then all of a sudden you've boomed and you've made a lot of money and you have no track of it and you have no idea where it went, what's going on, or what to do, and you feel overwhelmed. And for a lot of people at that point, they're just like, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to ignore it, not look at it. And then the problems just start going. So while you may not feel like you are ready or you're making money yet to have somebody help you with your finances, it's at least worth a conversation and developing a relationship with a professional to kind of give you a guideline or have that relationship going, the acquaintance. So when you are ready, you know who to go to and you know when you can make that move. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, they don't do that until it's too late. So I'm really proud of, not to say, for lack of a better word, this new generation of salon owners that this is the first step they want to do. They want to set themselves up right.
That's great. Yeah, because going at it on your own, especially if you're not trained in accounting or tax or bookkeeping, things like that, can be very overwhelming because not only do you have to know the basics of the concepts of it, but then you're having to learn an entirely new software. You're having to learn how to read financials. And again, it's taking time away from you. And I think that's what a lot of business owners believe is that, well, it's my business. I have to do it all myself. Like it's my responsibility. And that's great. But the thing is it really? Like, how true is that it's your sole responsibility to do this? It's your responsibility to run the business and make sure that you hire the right people that can help you, because that's how it really works, is you have to buy back your time. Because most of, the groomers that I know, they don't like having to deal with numbers. They don't. And so they want to be able to groom dogs and go to competitions and talk with their partners and things about that, like expanding and growing and training. A lot of groomers that I know love to train and educate the newer, like you said, the newer generation of groomers that are coming up.
And just because you have all of these hats doesn't mean you have to wear all of these hats. You could just have some good hats that fit really good. They look really great. It doesn't mean you have to go put on the construction one or, the food delivery guy one. Wear the ones that fit best for you. And for a lot of people, that is not the accounting, bookkeeping, payroll hat. So the way that I like to describe it is, and with anything, not just, accounting work, but even social media marketing, it really anything. Look at how much time it's costing you and how much time you're spending like agonizing over this and trying to figure out how to do it and how many hours that's adding up to, and not to mention the mental stress. And how many of those hours that you spent agonizing, what could you have groomed or gotten done with that time that would have been more profitable for you, that you could have paid somebody to do that in half the time? No, it is done thoroughly to the best extent. That's basically their job for you. And you could spend that doing something you make more money in and you get more enjoyment out of. So it's important to realize when it's worth outsourcing a task, because it's costing you more in stress, it's costing you more money, and it could be that time could be spent doing something else that's more meaningful.
Exactly. And then the thing is that also kind of ties back into what we were talking about with, automations. There's some things that you can automate, and then some things that you really also need to delegate. It's what's called delegation. And I also understand, because I think we talked about this earlier in private, but I have like such a type A personality that I want to do it myself, or there's almost like a sense of guilt that I can sometimes feel if I don't do it myself. I think that I might be failing at something, but that's not always the case. Like, for example, again, story time here, right? I hate cleaning my house. I hate it. And honestly, it looks terrible because my partner also hates cleaning the house. But the thing is, I know that is a limitation I have. I have zero desire to do it. If I try to do it, it drains my energy and it makes me very frustrated and ill the rest of the day. So that being said, we have to get help. Like, I have to outsource for that. But the thing is, I budget for it. Like, I know I have to perform X amount of work in order to cover and pay for that every month, every time someone comes out and helps me. But the thing is, it's so much nicer. I'd rather pay a couple of $100s to have someone come out and help me with the house. And I work in a nice, clean and uplifting environment instead of being just bogged down. It makes such a difference energetically. And so it makes me much more productive, because right now my office is not where it needs to be. I'll be honest. I'm also getting ready to hopefully, move into a new place. So it's just kind of discombobulated for me right now. So I'm just like, I can't wait to get settled and get everything clean. But like I said, it's knowing your limits, knowing when to delegate, and knowing what to delegate. And I am going to do a podcast on this because I did find a very cool tool on this, and I will show people how to do it. But it's basically taking inventory or taking, stock of your actual day, your time, and then how you feel about doing each one of these tasks. Does it give you any energy? Does it drain your energy? And then also, does it make you money, or does it basically cost you money? So you're kind of putting those two factors together to see what your ideal day really looks like. And then you take more of that and you make more of those kind of days. And then you delegate the ones that don't make you money or don't make you happy.
And there are some things that they're really not that bad to do, but when you neglect them and let them build up, that's when they are bad. I found this girl, I was scrolling on TikTok, and now every time I see it, I got to stop and watch, because it was a video. She was basically yelling at me about, get up and do your laundry. Do it right now. It takes 10 minutes. And you know why? Because your ancestors were having to go down in the creek and they were having to wash their stuff and they didn't have a dryer. They would laugh at you right now because you have a washer and you have a dryer. You don't even have to do half the work they do. If you would do it right now, it would take you 10 minutes and you wouldn't have to spend an hour doing it at the end of the week. Quit scrolling and go do your laundry. And I was like, oh my God, like that's wow, I'm going to go do my laundry right now. I don't know if I needed to be yelled at or what, but when I put that in perspective, I mean, especially with having 2 kids too, like, and doing all the other things, multiple businesses and having a life, like I sometimes I just want to sit on the sofa and vegetate and not do my laundry and that type of stuff. So when I look at it of, you know what, instead of letting it all pile up, if I just took 10 minutes and did this task, and you can apply this to anything. If I took 10 minutes and put in, my expenses, if I took 10 minutes and I did this load of laundry, if I took 10 minutes and made myself something healthy instead of eating, junk food or going fast food, what difference would that make in my life? So what difference would the 10 minutes do? But if you ignore, okay, let me put in this small amount of time, it's going to be a lot more time. And that is when it's going to be costly and you might just want to get somebody to do it for you. But look at the time that you have in the day and what you can actually accomplish and make the decisions on what is it worth for me to do and what is it worth me not to even do. And, you mentioned cleaning your house. Like that is a big task too. And I'm sure it feels wonderful when you come in and everything's clean and sparkly and, somebody did a great job. But, after you do everything else, and then you're like, oh man, I gotta go home and clean my house. And, who knows what? It's daunting. It gets daunting.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that. And I want to do something a little fun while I have you on on the podcast, if you don't mind. I know. So guys, I have a thing where I absolutely love the whole "Am I the a-hole?" comments on Reddit. And I'm kind of addicted to them. I have a couple of podcasters I listen to all the time. But I was doing a little bit of deep dive. Honestly, I got on Reddit for the first time, I think yesterday or the day before. I don't get on Reddit. I just listen to the podcast, right? And they're funny. But I decided, I'm like, let me see what all is on there and see if I can do something like this for our dog grooming community and kind of get a little bit of feedback. So I am going to do this with certain podcast guests that I think would have a fun time with this. So, Laurren, you get to be my first victim here.
Boy.
And I'm going to read this to you, and I'd love to get your feedback, and then I'll weigh in on it, and we'll just kind of go from there. But the first one is, am I the a-hole for not tipping dog groomers at first? So, I took my 2 dogs to get groomed today. When I went to pay $150 total, the groomer asked if I'd like to tip on the card or cash. I said, I'd just like you to ring up the total for the grooming. And she said, but do you want to tip on it, card or cash? So I asked her to repeat what the total was. And I said, that's what I want you to ring up. And she goes, okay, so no tip. And I said, no. This was an extremely activating and kind of embarrassing experience as there were people right behind me and I felt put on the spot and made to feel bad with the okay, no tip remark. When I got home, I told my husband, and he said, while the lady seemed pushy, he does tip when he brings the dogs there. So I went back and tipped them. Was I the a-hole for not offering up a tip unprompted? All right. So you're the groomer and the finance. So let me know.
Okay, so a lot of people, especially there's a lot of people who are newer to owning dogs and having them groomed, they may not know that it's customary to tip your groomer. Actually, it is customary to even tip your sharpening and repair person, and a lot of people don't really realize that either. I feel like since the other person tipped, they may have been expecting that. I was like, are you sure? But I mean, it sounds like, and we're getting one person's side of it. So, it kind of depends. But your prices should also be high enough that you shouldn't expect a tip. But the kind of the pushiness. Now, I am not a very sales oriented person. Like, I will ring up your total and be like, here it is. If you'll fill this out for me, not this is the tip screen. You can click this, or that. I'm like, if you'll fill this out for me, it'll ask if you want a receipt at the end. I'm just going to go over here and, book your next appointment. Like, I'm not going to stare at you. Do you want to leave me a tip? Did you like your service? I'm not that type of person. I'm not pushy in that degree. So I don't know. Maybe they were kind of basing it on like past like transactions. Like, are you sure? Like your spouse usually tips. Are you sure about that? That type of thing.
Yeah.
So maybe it might have been on that. But like, I feel like maybe I would have to know how the person was like presenting it. But I mean, to kind of have to just be direct and no, I want you to ring it up for that amount. I mean, they could have been like, oh, Susan usually brings the dogs. I'm not sure. I'll just ring it up for this. And if she does, I'll have her make it up to you next time. So, and that's happened to me before. So it just kind of depends. I would have liked to hear both sides of the equation because it sounds like both of them. It might have been a situation that kind of caused a little bit of, you have to be stern, and some people are pushy about it. I'm not. So I don't know. I can't really give a direct response if they are or not, because like I said, I don't fault people when they don't tip. I don't expect it. And honestly, sometimes people don't tip because of their own personal situation. You're charging enough for that service. If I'm charging you $150, I don't know if I would tip me $40 extra on top of it, to be honest with you. If you want to do that,
Sure.
that's awesome. But I'm kind of paying you enough already. So, balls in their court. How do you
Well,
feel?
that's really, well, honestly, clearly in my actual industry, we typically don't get tips because trust me, accountants typically do charge enough. So we do charge that. But the thing is, I know, for example, I have an excellent dog groomer, and she does a really good job. I typically, tip between 15, 20, maybe 20%, mostly for her. And so that is kind of standard. But do I have to? No. Does she ever make me feel like I have to? Absolutely not. And that's kind of the difference, I think it seems. Now, I do know that in a lot of groom shops, there is somebody, I don't know if this actually was the groomer or if this might be someone who does reception for her. Because I know my groomer has someone up front as a receptionist, and she also does the cashier and the payments. And so it could have just been that she might have thought she didn't understand what she was saying. I think honestly with this, it was just a miscommunication. I don't think it was the person being rude. She was just saying, oh, well, do you want a tip? And I think you're absolutely right that if the client has a history of tipping, then they're kind of maybe halfway expecting it. Not saying they're demanding it, but it's just common for this client to tip. So, but she did have an entry in here. She said that she did go back and she tipped, later on. So she actually did that. And so that was nice. So she did make up for it. But it seems like Reddit in the comments section, they're saying not the a-hole because it's really up to you whether or not you want to tip. Is it frowned upon if you don't? It could be in some circles. But what I find interesting is that in most European and other countries in the world, they don't tip. They don't have a tipping culture at all. And so, even with food, even like when you go out to dinner, how we tip waiters and waitresses, they don't tip at all. In fact, some places you're not allowed to. And
they must make more than $3 an hour for certain.
I'm sure they do.
They pay a livable wage.
I'm sure they do. And really, I'm not against that either. I think it's a good idea. Let's just take tipping off the table and just give livable wages. But I also hear other sides to that for people, like, for example, wait staff. They're like, I make so much in tips because I'm really good at what I do. So I get tipped out so well every night. And I wouldn't want to make just a standard wage because they're making like $30, $40 an hour, just in tips. And so they're like, I'm doing really well. I don't want to go back to that. So I guess it's just
I wonder
depends on how you look at it.
Maybe it depends on when you're asking them that question, because I wonder if they'd have that same response on a cold Tuesday night in January. They work at a beach bar.
Exactly.
And it's 4th of July weekend.
Exactly. Okay. Well, Laurren, this has been really informative and I really appreciate your time. And I hope everyone has gotten a lot out of this. Of course, Laurren, if they want to get in contact with you, what is the best way to reach you?
Yeah. So I am super active on Facebook. I kind of have the two. I have the transformational solutions and the transformational bookkeeping. The solutions is just more kind of geared to your personal financing, and the Facebook page is a lot of information on strategies to get out of debt, build a personal budget, that type of stuff. But I do offer that realm of professional services through the transformational bookkeeping, which is the bookkeeping, the payroll, a little bit of consulting, advising for new business owners and that type of stuff. So you can go directly to my website, either one of them, but we'll just go with transformational bookkeeping. It's spelled a little differently, so watch out for that. It is TRANSFURMATIONAL, transformationalbookkeeping.com. And you can follow me on social media. I am primarily active on Facebook. But if I can help you with any of your bookkeeping business needs, if you go over to my website, I have if you go to contact, I have a form that you can fill out. Tell me a little bit about you, your business, what you need help with, what your needs are, and I will hit you back ASAP and we'll get something going. I always say you will hear from me right away unless I am on a ventilator, in which you will not hear from me because I am, incapacitated. So, but you'll hear from me regardless. And if you didn't hear from me, go check your spam.
Oh, I tell you what, that's dedication right there. And guys, yep. And remember, okay, Pet Biz Advisors, we're also taking requests for future podcast topics. Email me at petbizadvisors@gmail.com. That's petbiz, B-I-Z, advisors@gmail.com. And as always, our guest information will be located in the description box below for our YouTube viewers. And don't forget to follow us at Pet Biz Collective on Facebook and join us in the business conversation geared directly to the pet grooming business owners. See you next time, guys. Bye.